So today we're going to be working on this commission that I got. Um, and this is the primary image that we're going to be using as reference today, or well, I guess I'm going to be using as reference today. Um, this is a commission for a new YouTuber named Aja, right? Or Ajay from South Korea. And I'm gonna link her YouTube channel and all her details below in this video. I'm actually really excited for this. I think she turned out really amazing. She was already really good from the start. So this is what her original character looked like. As you can see, her character also had braids, but they were done a little differently. Instead of braiding the hair strands and then adding texture, which is what I normally do, she made the hair strands have a braid-like texture. So I'm gonna start by removing the hair. And we're removing the hair because we want to start with a clear base. And this is what her base layer looks like. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna first create a new layer. This is gonna be our guide. On this guide is where we're going to place our hairline. So for the hairline, you can draw it yourself, or you can use the mirror tool to make it more symmetrical. In my case, I drew it myself, and then I used the mirror tool to correct it and to make it more even on each side. And you can see me doing here. Our reference, and the beautiful lady in our reference, whose name I do not know, has a lot of braids. And so I had to think about how I was going to position each of the braids in order for them to fit properly. So positioning is easier if you use the eraser tool. And so you can position the braids by drawing in the spaces where they're going to inhabit, let's say, or be in. But I find that it's much easier to fill in from the hairline and then erase away until you get where you're going to have your braids in. I also recommend using the mirror tool for this part because it helps get a cleaner look on each side. And overall, it looks better. When we move to the back side, you have to go back to your body texture, create another guide layer on the body, and we're just gonna follow the lines that we created for the front, and so that we can create even lines in the back. So we're gonna be using the front lines as like a guide as well. Now, when both of our face texture and body texture guides are done, we're going to add another layer. And this is where we're going to begin to draw the individual hair strands. And so I kept the green color from the original model. I wanted to keep it similar to what she already had because I feel like she already had a vision in mind and I didn't want to change it too much. You want to pick a brush that's not too large or too small. We want like the Goldilocks of brushes, because if it's too large, the hair will be too thick. And if it's too small, the hairs will look very pixelated. So we want something in between. So let me speed this up because this part is very tedious and very boring. Next, we're gonna use the blurring brush, or the little fuzzy brush. We're gonna make it much bigger than the size we're using to draw the hair strands, and picking a darker shade than the one for the hair. We want to make sure the hair pops. We're just gonna fill in that area where our guide was, and you can create another layer for this, but we're gonna fill in that area. And so it's kind of like we're filling in where the hair would be, the one that we're not gonna draw, right? And so there's a contrast to the hair that I drew with the hair strands and this hair and the one that we're shading in. As you can see for the back, I had to go back and add more hairs because I thought it was a little too sparse. And so this is the great part, is that you can just go back and adjust and continue to add things to make it look better. For the front braids, the mesh needs to be put as close to the scalp as possible, because the front braids are going to be cornrows, and so those are stuck to the scalp. So we have to make the mesh as close to the scalp as possible without actually sinking in. Otherwise, the braids are also going to sink in. Now for adding the braids, I first edited the hair texture to a color that was white and blue so that I could see the contrast when I was braiding the hair strands. I think this is useful to do so that you can get a feel of how the braids fall. You can change it later, however you see fit. Especially, you know, the hairs aren't going to stay this way, although I did think they turned out pretty cool looking. This is not the texture I was going to end up with in the end. And so then from there you can just start braiding up, and you can adjust this. You should adjust the size, the width and the thickness of the hair strands, because if you use the original size, it'll be too large. I ended up using 0.020 and 0.016 a lot for this section because they were very thin cornrows, but you might find something more suitable to you if you want to attempt a hairstyle similar to this. The way I did the hairs in the back, I adjusted the mesh for each layer starting from the bottom. And so I started from the bottom because it is much easier to adjust the hairs when you're starting from the bottom, because you know it gives you more room. If you start from the top of the head, adding the braid, you have to be really conscious of how much space you're taking up. and you really don't want to take up a lot of space. Otherwise, you'll run out of room. And so it's harder to get an idea for how the hair is going to fall. So that's why I start from the bottom. I think it's easier. And for this, you can adjust it however long you want it to be. I ended up trying it a few times before I got just the right length and also the right thickness. So again, going back and thinking how thick you want the hair strands to be. I think for these I ended up using 0.022. I wanted them to be thicker than the cornrows because at this point I would have added more hair, but it depends on you. And again, I think about this a lot, like if I was really braiding hair, and so this is what I mainly use as reference too. When I was finally happy with the placement, I edited the hair texture again. I wanted to keep the same colors that Aja originally had, so I used darker and lighter shades to achieve that. The last thing I did was I added the bones. And I found that since I have so many hair strands, they sometimes stand up on the model after I add the bones. And I finally figured out how to get rid of that or stop the hair strands from standing up is you can fix that by adjusting the density. And this is the finished model. Doesn't she look great? I'm so happy. And thank you for watching another video, and thank you for helping me reach 200 subscribers. I honestly can't believe it. And look at my happy dance.